Once again, you're welcome to Wisdom Academy. Today we're going to look at an IGCSE topic which is called the human impact on the ecosystem, the human impact on our environment, on our ecosystem, on our environment. Okay, so without much ado, let's begin. First of all, let's introduce the ecosystem, let's introduce the environment to us and the problem we're facing with the environment, the challenges we're having in our environment. You know, because of the quest for survival, you know, we roughly have about 8 billion people struggling to survive on this planet Earth right now as it is. So because of the quest for survival, we have depleted a lot of resources that are supposed to be the free gifts of nature. We've devolved most of these resources and in our quest to survive. Human survival depends on the health of the ecosystem. If the ecosystem is sick, is depleted, is overused, and is sick, it has a lot of challenges like we have today, like erosion, deforestation, like global warming, and all of these things, then we'll have a lot of challenges that are bigger than ours to solve, okay? Like we created already, we're having global warming, we're having depletion in the ozone layer because the result of the dangerous gases like carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, all of these gases, what you call these Yugochoko gases. So when they are released to the atmosphere, they destroy the ozone layer, which is a direct shield from the sun. You know, the sun's radiations do not get to us, or the sun's very dangerous radiation do not get to us because of the shield, the ozone layer that Almighty God has placed above us. So, but these gases, they begin to eat up this shield and create hole in the ozone layer, and thereby we have it is directed. That's why today we have a lot of cancers. We have a lot of cancerous problems. One of the problems we've created, human beings have created, because of the quest to develop, the reasons to develop, to build roads, hospitals, education, schools, and all of these things, to build skyscrapers, to build every infrastructures, that the train station, the roads, the whatever that is part of the ecology of or the ecosystem of development. Because of that quest to have this advancement, then we begin to deplete all the resources that we have. Okay, we begin to clear the forest, bring down the trees, create road through them. We begin to cut down the forest to build houses. We begin to bring down the forest to build hospitals. We begin to bring down the forest to build hotels. We begin to bring down the forest to build factories. So all of these things is socially, economically having impact on our environment. So the human harm the environment so much. We human beings, we harm the environment so much, and so the consequence of harming the environment is problems like global warming. Okay, problems like global warming will result from will be one of the consequences of our actions. The consequences of our actions, what we have to pay by bringing down all the forests, making everywhere desert. We're making almost the earth super hot, super warm, and because we bring down everything and we make it everywhere desert. So our desertification activity that we're doing is actually having consequences. One of the consequences is global warming and habitat destruction. The destruction of the habitat is also a consequence of our action, and then acid deposition in the river, in the water, and all of these things becomes some of the consequences of our action. Not only limited to this, 90% of our environment has been depleted, and 90% of the marine species have been depleted. 90 to 95% of the marine species, like the aquatic organisms, that's what we mean by the marine species, they've been depleted. We've made a lot of these organisms to go on extinct, that we can no longer find some of these organisms. You know, they add everything in the ecosystem, add beauty to the environment. Everything in the ecosystem, both the plants and the animals, they add beauty to the environment. But our actions have inadvertently affected the entire environment, has inadvertently affected the entire environment. So water pollution is the devastating to the people, to the animals, and to the fishes and the birds that lives around the water. So water pollution is a huge effect on us by our deposition of the oil, the petroleum. We drill the petrol from the ocean. So we spill oil into the water and thereby killing the aquatic organisms in the water. We drop a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus into the water and thereby killing, allowing algae to grow. Algae to grow. And once algae grow, they spread on top of the water and prevent oxygen from entry to the water. And once the fishes don't get enough oxygen, then they begin to die. And once they begin to die, a lot of problems begin to erupt in the ecosystem. So our activities are so among us that we need to slow down. But human being is not going to slow down. You know why? Because population keep rising. Because the challenge is getting bigger. We're competing for a lot of things. People keep going to school. People begin to get more and more educated. And we begin to find people begin to find jobs. So in doing that, more companies have to erupt, more people need to build. And in doing that, in opening new branches, in building new companies, you're going to continuously constantly deplete the environment. You're going to constantly deplete the resources in the environment. The grasses will go to go, the trees are going to go, they're going to go down. Cities will be built, more and more cities are being built, and people are not planting trees enough. So to the ratio, we bring down trees, we don't plant. We do lumbering, we cut down trees for furniture, for books, for notebooks. We use trees to make our notebooks. We cut down trees for our furniture, for our notebook, for so many things, even for building houses. In America, they use the wood, the trees to build houses. In America, North Americans, and in most parts of America, they use the trees, the wood to build the houses. So you cut down trees to build the houses, you cut down trees to make furniture, you cut down trees to make a whole lot of things like your notebooks and so many things. So you can imagine how we depleted the plant system, how we fight the plant organisms. So now we say that in ecosystem comprises of every organism that interact with one another, that lives together in the same environment and interact with one another. And in this ecosystem, it will include human beings, which we are predominant, and we also have the other animals, other sets of animals, and then we also have the plants, we have the fungi, we have the prokaryotes, we have the protists. All of these things encompass, and these are for the living things. We also have things like that add to it, like the air, the water, that add to the ecosystem. So, but we are overusing this ecosystem. Our greed is causing us a lot of damage in the ecosystem. Now, ecosystem includes all the biotic and abiotic factor in one particular environment. For example, we have the biotic factors, that's the living factors. Okay, the living factors, the living part of the ecosystem, the living things part of the ecosystem, the living factors that affect the environment. Okay, the factors that affect the environment are categorized into two. We have the biotic factors and the abiotic. Abiotic factors are the non-living part of the environment, okay, that affect the environment. The non-living part of the environment that affect the environment. Now let's take a look at the impact of nutrient, that's inorganic pollution. The impact that nutrients or inorganic pollution have in our environment, First of all, where are the sources of these inorganic nutrients? For example, one, we get them from the surface runoff from the field. When rain falls from the field, water runs off the surface and then begin to wash the nutrients away. Okay. Then another one is sewage treatment plants. Okay. In sewage, so many things are deposited in our environment, right? Another one is cooling water and electricity. Cooling water, the cooled water probably sometimes run off to our environment. So these are some of the huge impact, because we are always producing electricity. We have to produce electricity, and we use water, we heat water, and we use the steam of the water to turn the blades of the turbines to produce electricity. So as a result, we are depleting the environment. We're taking so much water to generate electricity, right? And then sewage We deposit sewage, we don't treat them properly, or even when we treat, we still deposit some of them in our environment. So it affects plants a lot, okay? And then the surface runoff of water. Now, what are the causes? One is eutrophication, the excess nutrient. Eutrophication is the release of excess nutrient into the water body, like nitrogen and phosphorus. This will stimulate the growth of algae. Okay, we stimulate the growth. I already explained this. The growth of algae. Algae are those greenish mucus that covers the water body. If you go to some swamp or some rivers, you see that those green, they look like leaf, they're not leaf. They grow, they spread on top of the water. They spread on top of the water, and such that the living things under the water do no longer get. So, still on eutrophication, we say the release of nitrogen to the water. You see, release nitrogen and phosphorus to the water, and this will start to make this algae to grow. Algae will start to grow and cover the water. We cover the water such that the organisms under the water no longer get enough oxygen. No longer get enough oxygen, and if that happens, they might die. Right? Okay, now let's go to the impact of organic pollution. The impact on the environment. We just talked about the impact of inorganic pollution. Now let's see the impact of organic pollution in our environment. Now, what are the sources of organic pollution in our environment? We have domestic sewage, the one you do from the house. Your sewage water, the water you used to wash your plate. You know, you never imagine where it flows to. You just see that it flows, you wash in the tap, you wash your plate, you wash your clothes, you wash your this, all your dirty things, the poo-poo water and all of these things. You flush your poo-poo and then it goes somewhere. You don't know where it's going. Okay? Sometimes some unorganized country, they let these things to flow to the river. They let these things to flow to the river. They channel it to the river. Some countries that are not developed, even some developed countries, they don't take proper care of these things. So this sewage water, they let them flow into the river. And then they cause damage to the living things in the river. Okay? They cause damage there. Another source of organic pollution in the water is the industrial effluents. In the industry, they release a lot of chemicals, they dump them in the water. They release a lot of chemicals, they dump them in it. Then the farm waters also, all the things we use in the farm, then we dump them in the river. So all these are the sources of organic pollution in the water. Then the cause, it causes excess of organic manure. The manure in the river will be too much because you release so much things that causes manure, and the sewage in the water. Then what will happen? Depletion of oxygen. Oxygen will be affected in the river. Okay, oxygen will be affected. You can see if you look at this river, like washing soap, so many things we dump in the river, so many chemicals, and this will eat up the oxygen in the river and thereby affect every other organisms that lives in the river. In many cases, you see some of them will die. Okay, the impact of oil pollution on the water. These are all activities of man. Okay, in biology and geography, when we say man, we refer to man and woman. Okay, but mostly man, because we are the predominant when it comes to the destruction of the environment. I think men are the champion of those who have destroyed the environment way more than the women. Okay, the women, they are very good in taking care of things. They're very good in taking care of things, and we believe that they also take care of the environment. The men, they don't care. They just want to make money. They don't care whether anyone dies, whether any other organism dies in the environment. Okay, I'm not trying to put the men down anyway, but I'm just saying we are the leaders. We are the leaders in this regard. Okay, so now we say the sources. One is oil spill. In the oil and gas industry, I don't want to mention their names, so they will not look as if I'm calling them out. But oil and gas, all the oil and gas companies, they're part of this big, huge problem. They are part of those who are destroying our environment. During the oil exploration and oil drilling, during the drilling of oil, sometimes, and the refining of oil, sometimes they spill oil in the river because they drill oil from the big oceans. So sometimes they release a lot of oil spills into the water, and this oil, they're poisonous to aquatic organisms like the fish, like every other aquatic organisms in the water. So when they inhale or taste this water or this oil water, it becomes poisonous to them and they die. You can see how these fishes have died in the water. So they all die in the water because of the oil spillage. And so we are affecting our environment, because these fishes, they add to the ecosystem. They add value to the ecosystem. So when we do this, we are destroying our ecosystem. Then another, from oil pollution, another one is the normal operation of the oil tankers. You know, the tankers, those who carry the oil on land, they spill the oil everywhere, and then this can flow to river, and then this can kill the aquatic organisms. And even the oil they spill on the grassland, and then the grasses, they all die. This oil, when the tanker fall, they spill on the ground, and all the grasses, they die. And sometimes they fall, they catch fire, and both the human beings, animals, grasses, plants, everything dies. So this is a huge pollution in our environment. Another one is the coastal refinery. You know, most refineries, they are built along the coast. So sometimes this waste product, they just dump them in the river. So this one, all the waste products, the petrochemicals, some of these petrochemicals, or some of these waste products from petroleum refinery that are dropped in the river, they cause a lot of damages. They cause a lot of damages and kills all the aquatic organisms. Then another thing is the river runoff. Okay, the runoff in the river. Also, this is a huge pollution caused by oil problem. Then the urban runoff and sewage. We've already mentioned the sewage. The sewage that is being dumped in the river, they are part of the problem which affect the ecosystem. Now, what are the things that suffer the mostly affected the aquatic animals are the fishes and every aquatic birds. Fish and aquatic birds, the birds that live on or around the water. They get affected, and the fishes get affected, and every other aquatic organisms get affected. Okay? Now, oil spills in Mumbai, in India. Mumbai is in India. See, there was a time they had this issue, oil spill in Mumbai, and so many aquatic organisms died. The tanker ship also, you know, the ship that carry oil. Apart from the tanker vehicle on land, we have tanker ship that carries oil in the water. So sometimes they can have leakage, and as they move in the ocean, there's a leakage. Oil is being spilled into the river that kills every other aquatic organisms. So these oil companies should take responsibility for their actions, okay? And then human beings also, not only oil companies, many factories that are polluted should take responsibility for their action. Now, the impact of thermal pollution. Okay. We say impact of thermal pollution. Now, thermal pollution, like heat pollution, right? Thermal means heat. So what are the impacts of heat pollution? 3 major causes of thermal pollution. What are the things that cause thermal pollution? Number 1 is the use of water as a cooling agent. We already said this, using water to cool. You know, remember, we use water to cool the car engine, we use water to cool. So major engines, major factories, the engines in factories, we use water to cool. So this one will result to huge heat. The water will be so hot, and this could cause pollution when this water is dropped in the river or dropped on land. So when this hot water is dropped on land, it can kill everything and anything it finds. If it's dropped in the river, also can also kill. Then another one is the soil erosion. Erosion is the flooding of water on the land, okay? So whenever we have this soil erosion and it washes away the topsoil surface, probably to the water, to the river bodies. So all these are big, huge problems. Then the roll-off from hot paved surface. The hot paved surface, the roll-off into the river or into any other part, will cause a lot of pollution and damages in our it may erode our soil away and also pollute every organism that it finds in its way. Now let's take a look. Thermal pollutions can lead to decrease in dissolved oxygen level in the water. Thermal pollution can lead to what? Decrease to the dissolved oxygen in the water. Why? They increase the biological demand of aquatic organisms for oxygen. So this is a huge problem. Thermal pollution is also a big problem. Okay, thermal pollution is found in the industry especially. You know, the most factory, you can take a look at this. Most factory, what they do is that they just heat and release so many gases into the atmosphere. So many heat into the atmosphere. They flare gases into the atmosphere, Nobody holds them to be accountable. They don't help in cleaning up the environment. In the name of creating jobs, in the name of whatever they want to call it, in the end, they just release even radioactive pollution also. If you go to nuclear power plants, they pollute the environment a lot. They release a lot of radioactive material into the atmosphere, which are very dangerous to the human being around these environments. Okay, so there are a lot of thermal pollution. Factories releases a lot of heat that affect the entire ecosystem. They affect everything, the birds, the ozone layer, causing global warming and so on and so forth. So we have to look into this. The sources of radioactive pollution. Nuclear power plants, they cause a lot of radioactive pollution. Nobody says anything about this. We just pretend it. Okay? And then another one is the medical waste, or the medical waste. Okay? They are also huge pollutants in the environment. Then mining of radioactive ore. When we mine radioactive materials, these ones are also, in the process, we're causing pollution on the land. Radioactive pollution can be very dangerous thing because radiation mutates the DNA. Radiation will mutate the DNA and make the DNA to mutate a couple number of times, and then you start acting different from your norm, causing abnormal growth also, and possibly cancer. So we must be careful the way we pollute our environment. We put from the factory, from creating radioactive material, which affects our DNA and makes us have abnormal growth and also cause cancer. Not only radioactive pollution, thermal pollution, like we talked about just now, that affects our environment, thermal pollution, oil spillage, and so many other things we've discussed. Release of chemicals into the environment, aquatic and non-aquatic, biotic and non-biotic factors. All of these things, we must take into cognizance the way we affect our environment, the way we deplete our environment. Now, let's take a look at the human activity by fishing practices. Human being, the quest to find food and find resources to survive, we engage in the fishing activities. We engage in fishing activities. In doing this, we affect the fish. We catch the fish for food. Okay? But it's okay, but when we overdo it, this is a problem. And sometimes when we do this, we don't do the normal fishing, we do the destructive fishing practices. We don't do the normal professional fishing, we do the destructive one, which is now dangerous to the environment. For example, one of the destructive fishing practice is poisoning, putting chemicals in the river to weaken the fish so that we can catch them easily. Okay? Poisoning the water bodies. Another one is explosive fishing. We put some explosive into the river to explode the fish so that we can catch them. So explosive fishing and poisoning fishing so that we can just catch them for food. It's also an activity that affects the ecosystem. Okay? We should fish with net and basket. Okay? So in order not to destroy the ecosystem. Now, effect of destructive fishing practices, the effect in the environment. One, the problem that it causes. Now, one of it is that it destroys the habitat, the aquatic habitat. Another effect from these destructive fishing practices that we engaged in is that it inhibits the growth of new corals. Okay, it inhibits the growth of new corals in the river. Another big effect we get from here that destroys the ecosystem is that it reduces fish stocks. Yes, because we are poisoning the water for fishes, so it will reduce the stock of fish in the river. And then we're also doing the explosive fishing, so it definitely reduces the fish stock. Another effect is loss of fishery jobs and incomes. So people, if you continue to do poisoning fishing and destructive fishing or explosive fishing, after a time you no longer find fish to fish. So the moment we no longer find fish to fish, then people will lose job. Those fishermen will lose job. Then another one is loss of lives. Loss of lives. Not only the fishes, even human beings can lose their life because these things, as you keep doing it, you begin to affect your whole health. Now, then another one is loss of coastal protection and tourism. The things when you keep doing explosive fishing, the coastal environment may be affected, and then it will affect your tourism business in your country. Human impact on coral reef. Now, coral mining, pollution, overfishing, blast fishing, and the digging of the canals are serious threats to this entire ecosystem. So all this activity, whether you are mining coral, whether you polluted the environment or polluted the water, or whether you're doing overfishing, overfishing is a huge problem that human beings have caused. Okay, overfishing is a huge problem that the human beings have caused in the environment. Overfishing is a huge problem that the human beings have caused in the environment, right? So we've talked about habitat loss. We mentioned the farming in the previous explanation. Farming, the activity cutting down trees to grow crops, cutting down the forest to grow crops, affect the environment. After some time, we start having erosion problem or desertification problem. We talked about mining resources from the ground, like the coral mining, gold mining, all kinds of mining from the ground. And when we do this, sometimes we affect the environment, we affect the water. Is that okay? We affect the water, we contaminate the water, and so on and so forth. And we also affect the food chain. Okay? Then another one is forestry. We mentioned that a bit. We say we do lumbering, we cut down the forest, either to build houses, to build schools, to build roads, and thereby affecting the entire family. We get the lump for food, for furniture, for houses, and all of this, but we end up destroying the entire ecosystem by bringing down the trees because we want to make paper. We talked about pollution. We talked about water pollutions, how the release of dangerous chemicals affect the entire water bodies, like releasing not just chemicals, substances, elements such as nitrogen and phosphorus, which trigger the growth of algae. And when algae grow, they cover the whole water body. And then when that happens, the fishes do not get enough oxygen, and then they start to die. We talked about those water pollution, releasing the different types of chemical. We've talked about those chemicals that can be released in the water that can kill every other organism. We talked about overfishing and all the problems, and so on and so forth. Now let's move on. Just an overview. Approximately 10% of the world's coral reefs are already dead. They're dead by our own activities. Okay? And then we say about 60% of the world's coral reef are at risk. 60% at risk, 10% is already dead. So if the 60% dies, we have 70% of the coral reef that are depleted by our activity. Impact of global warming on the sea. Now, all this activity we are doing, releasing gases, the one we've mentioned, we say the radioactive, the impact of releasing radioactive elements or radioactive gases to the atmosphere, the impact of reducing thermal heat into the atmosphere, the impact of releasing dangerous substances into the atmosphere will have cognizant effect on the ecosystem by depleting the ozone layer. And when that happens, the release of these gases such as CO2, it's a greenhouse gas, CO2 gas, nitrogen gas, and so many other gases, SO2 gas, which are greenhouse gases. Methane also is a greenhouse gas, CH4. All this, when we release continuously and constantly release them to the atmosphere, they will deplete our ozone layer, and it will increase the global warming. So it's caused by the influx of human industries and agriculture. Global warming is caused by the influx of human industry. Human beings keep building industry that releases dangerous gases into the atmosphere, and also agriculture. So the greenhouse gases are CO2 and methane, carbon dioxide. CO2 means carbon dioxide, and methane, and they are responsible for global warming in the sea. Physical effect of ocean warming on marine pollution, marine population. Now let's take a look at the physical effect of ocean warming. When the ocean get warmed up, because of so many heat, this CO2 gas and methane, they've created a hole in the ozone layer. Okay, and so there is much heat that is reaching the sea or the ocean. Now when you have so much heat on the ocean, when the ocean gets too much overheated, what happens? There will be changes in the natural habitat and food supply, and changing ocean chemistry and ocean acidification will occur because there's so much heat now on the ocean. The chemistry of the ocean will change. Ocean that used to be so cool will now be hot or warm. So the acidification will increase. And anything else becomes not properly aligned. Now let's take a look at the ocean acidification. When the ocean is too acidic, what happens? It's caused, first of all, what causes it? It is caused by CO2. 30 to 40% of CO2 released by humans goes to the ocean and make the ocean to be too acidic. You remember, if you write water reacting with CO2, you have carbonic acid. You have carbonic acid. Okay? If you want to see that, water reacting with CO2, you have a carbonic acid. We have a carbonic acid. Water plus CO2 will give you an acid, making the ocean to be too acidic. H2CO3, carbonic acid. So this acid will now be produced in the ocean because of our activity. This acid will now be produced in the ocean because of our activities. So when we are releasing too much carbon dioxide into the ocean, the water in the ocean will react with this carbon dioxide to produce a carbonic acid. Now this carbonic acid will make the acid to be too acidic. So that's what we're saying here. The ocean acidification is now becoming a worldwide issue, right? Because everywhere, every country is polluting the environment. So it's more soluble in colder water. Okay? The acid is more soluble in colder water than in the warm water. So we should be careful the way we are affecting the environment. The impact of sewage on fish. When we dump sewage water on the river or on the ocean, how does it affect the fish? Highly advancedly affected fish and other aquatic life. So when you dump sewage water in the ocean, it affects the fishes and every other aquatic organism so much. Okay, so much, because this will deplete. How? Because it will eat up the oxygen in the water. This sewage water will eat up the oxygen in the water. No one survives without oxygen. Okay, after a while, the fish will start dying when the oxygen is super depleted. They will be competing, all the aquatic organisms will be competing with the little oxygen remaining, and so they cannot survive after a while. So they start to die off. They start to die off. Is that okay? So we're going to describe how we can prevent species losses later. Okay. So first of all, but before we reach there, we talk about the excess organic matter, how it affects the entire system, right? The effect. When you have excess organic matter, you dump them in the water, what happens? They dissolve the oxygen content, adding stress to the aquatic organisms. All the aquatic organisms will be competing for oxygen. They will dissolve the oxygen. Oxygen will no longer be available for them, and then they will be stressing, and then they start to die off. Is that okay? Now, fish mortality is the most obvious one. The fish will start to die off, and because the sewage water eat up their oxygen content. They eat up their oxygen content, and then the sewage water, the fish or the every other aquatic in the river begin to have problem. Then the impact of overfishing. If you look at your book, you see overfishing. The impact of overfishing. How does it affect the aquatic organism? When you overfish, then there will be no balance in the ecosystem. Overfishing occurs when fish and other marine species are caught at faster rate than they can reproduce. You're catching them, you harvesting them, you're catching them, and for your own use, more faster than the fish can reproduce. So in the long run, the fish will begin to, or the aquatic organisms, some of them will begin to go on extinct, or they will be no longer enough, and then people will begin to lose job because they no longer be able to find fish when they go fishing. Okay, so these are the overfishing problem. It has destroyed many of the traditional fishing industry of the world. So when you overfish, many traditional fish industry no longer find fish. Okay, you overfish by using chemicals and other things quickly. You are so desperate to catch all the fish in the river. You don't let the fish to reproduce. You go every day, so many companies rushing, fishing every day back to back. No space to allow the fish to even breathe and reproduce. So when you do this, and then in the end, you see the problem will still bounce back to us. We bounce back to us. And if the fish are not in the ecosystem, you know the problem. We're going to find a lot of protein problem. We will not have enough protein, because fish are one of the best protein source for human beings. One of the best, okay? Overfishing impacts not only the natural balance and the health of our ocean, but also has resulted in great financial loss. First of all, it affects the natural balance when you overfish, and also cause the health of the ocean to be sick, makes the ocean to be sick. You don't know that the ocean is sick because of your activity, but the fact is that the ocean is getting sick because of your activity, and also has resulted to huge financial loss. Companies no longer find fish to fish, and this company, they're folding up. Now, how do we protect? I will send all of this. What should we do? What should we do in order to reduce this our activity, or to reduce this the way we are depleting the environment for the next generations to come? What should we do? These are some of the things that some countries we're trying to put forward to reduce all this drastic problem of human beings in our environment. This depletion of the ozone layer, or depletion of the ecosystem. The first one is the Environmental Protection Agency body was created in 1970. The world agreed that they should set up an Environmental Protection Agency so as to protect the environment. So this agency regulates the activity of how we deplete the environment. So legislation helps to protect the environment and endangered species. So we start making legislation for organisms, not only for human beings, to fight for animals in the environment, to fight for fish, to fight for the ocean. Clean Air Act has been enacted, and that companies that pollute the environment should also find a way to clean the environment. Clean Water Act has been enacted to clean the water. If there's oil spillage, the company has to come forward to clean the water as fast as possible in order not to destroy all the aquatic organisms. The Endangered Species Act has also been enacted, that people should stop this overfishing and all of these things. If you are caught, there's a huge fine, there's a huge punishment, and you may go to jail for it. So they make it so serious. This is to reduce the depletion of the environment and to reduce the effect on the ecosystem. Now, there are several ways that people can help protect our environment, even in our local communities. Okay, there are so many ways we work with, so many things we can do. One of it is to control population growth. This is one of it, to control population growth. If you reach some country, they just have 1 or 2 children only. You no longer have birth a lot. You have to control population growth. One of the ways to protect the environment. Okay, another way is to develop sustainable technology and practices. Sustainable technology, okay, and practices. So now, for example, electricity, we are trying to do the green energy research, so that we energy that we produce that do not pollute the environment. You know that when we're using thermal, or when we're using the fossil fuel to generate electricity, or nuclear to generate electricity, they have a lot of pollution problems. The fossil fuel that we extract to produce electricity, when we extract the fossil fuel like petroleum, oil, natural gas, and coal, we use them to drive our locomotives, but they pollute the environment a lot. So what we are doing now is trying to develop green energy, sustainable energy, and best practices. We produce electricity from sunlight, so that this one does not have pollution problem. Produce electricity from wind. This one does not have pollution problems. We produce electricity from geothermal. This one does not have pollution problems. So we are adopting best practices now that are sustainable and at the same time do not pollute our environment. This to reduce our effect on the environment. This to reduce the effect of human activity on our environment, the depletion of the ecosystem and the entire ozone layer and our entire environment. So when we adopt sustainable technology, green energy technologies, and we will be able to, as much as we can, to protect the environment. Another thing human beings are trying to do now is to protect and maintain the ecosystem. Okay, we try to build green environment. If you go to many countries, they plant a lot of trees. They make it green. They make it so nice, so green. Okay, even countries that are in the desert, they're planting a lot of trees and making it green. and also make sure that they don't deplete the environment, they don't spin oil in the water. The sewage they recycle the sewage now. Recycling is the way to go. We don't dump the plastic in the water. We don't dump the plastic in the land. We recycle plastic. We are clamoring for recycling. These are activities to maintain the environment, to reduce pollution in the environment. Recycling has to be elogized, has to be echoed. We have to echo recycling process. We have to reduce the production of plastic, paper for taking things in the grocery, for taking grocery. We have to use bags that are usable, reusable many times to go to grocery shop to buy things. We have to reduce all these plastic bags that are polluting the environment. Okay, all these plastic bags that we are dumping in the environment that are polluting the environment, we have to reduce the production of these things that pollute the environment. Okay, so quickly to round up, we're saying that the human survival and the well-being totally depend on the ecosystem. So if we destroy the ecosystem, the human being will come to an end. If we destroy the entire ecosystem, the human race will come to an end. If you think you are killing only the fish, you are killing only the trees, you are killing only the aquatic organisms, very soon you will see that if there are no plants, we cannot survive. If you turn everywhere to desert, you soon find out we cannot survive. If you melt the polar ice by global warming, and then we'll be overflowed with water and cities will be washed off. Okay, so you see we will not survive. So anyhow you look at it, we will not survive if we do not find renewable and sustainable technology to solve our problems. If we don't find sustainable technology to solve the human problem, and we keep depleting the environment, and then you see that eventually we will not survive. The human activity can be direct threats to the ecosystem. They cause destruction, degradation, and the impairment of our biodiversity. Our biodiversity is super important. Many countries, they are promoting biodiversity by doing a lot of advert to promote how to protect all the species, in our ecosystem. Okay, biodiversity to protect the ecosystem. Is that okay? Human activities affect the marine lives. When we say marine life, we're talking about the aquatic lives. As a result of the pollution that we are doing, as a result of the pollution that we are doing, as a result of overfishing that we are doing, as a result of invasive methodology we are having on the species, as a result of acidification. Acidification, like I say, you allow carbon dioxide to go into the ocean, and carbon dioxide reacts with the water to produce acid water. So acidification, by allowing acidification to happen, all of this affects our environment, and the marine pollution has the potential to seriously damage the marine habitats in and every other life in the sea. Now we say, but the good news is that various laws and policies have been created to protect our ecosystem. Okay, so with this, we come to the end of our class.